Hello everyone. This is a bit of an emergency video. I had been planning to have an R&R day with playing games and reading books, but a very important announcement came through for me this morning from NIS Amrerica, and I will insert the Twitter announcement they made here in the video, that they were delisting a bunch of games, specifically JRPGs. That was of obvious concern to me, even more so when I saw the titles. Two in particular I would consider very important. One of the games happens to be a favourite of mine on all platforms, and I'd been meaning for like 2 years to make a video about this game. I just never got around to it. So at least I would like to show you today what the game is, how beautiful it is in my opinion, and to alert you to the fact that this game, as well as a few others, will not be available digitally any longer on the respective online shops, whether it's the Nintendo eShop or the PlayStation PSN store. Now, we obviously do not know the situation behind it. I haven't seen any further explanations, but we have to assume there is a licensing issue. It normally is a licensing issue, and it looks like NIS has not been able to retain the licenses for publishing these games. We have seen issues like this before with Japanese developers and NIS, and they've sort of unbundled themselves and their games, and then sometimes proceeded to republish the games themselves, like Spike Chunsoft has done something like that. That is entirely possible, but these things can take time, and there is no certainty in life, and I don't have a crystal ball. The publisher in this case is Kadokawa, and I wouldn't be surprised if they want to do their own thing. But some of these games are by now older. Many of them have probably not achieved very high sales, so they'll obviously be looking at it, I would think, on a case-by-case basis. Let's have a look at my favourite game out of this bunch. It is called God Wars Future Past. You can see I've got the limited edition here, and you can see there the publisher is NIS, and the game is by Kadokawa Games. The beautiful cloth here came as part of the limited edition. Now, God Wars has a bit of an interesting story behind it, and I will put more information and links to interesting websites in the video description below, as usual. The chairman or CEO of Kadokawa Games is well known for being deeply interested in Japanese history, mythology, folklore and customs. And I believe this game may have been a bit of a pet project of his. Even though they were aware that it would probably always remain very niche, they proceeded and blessed us with what I think is a lovely game. Now, because I obviously wasn't prepared for this today, this is a completely off-the-cuff video, I don't have much in the way of gameplay footage available, but there's the odd little sprinkle I hope that I can insert, just to give you a little bit of flavour of the game.
Why does it have to be?
Lady Tsukuyomi, it's time.
O savaged gods on high, I understand. that you have all been enraged. We understand our sins of dishonoring our ancestral spirits and not respecting nature. Please, find it within your big hearts to forgive us. I offer you my daughter, Sakuya, to please you. Please accept this offering and calm your rage.
Please get back, Lady Tsukuyomi.
The game had a not terribly good start, at least on the PS4 when it arrived. The opening, beautifully illustrated cutscene did not have any subtitles, and the voices were in Japanese only. So Western audiences had no clue what story they were being told in the introduction. They obviously fixed that, but it took quite a while. So now we do have English voices as well. The game is otherwise throughout voice acted in both languages, Japanese and English, and I will give you a little sample of that so you can see what the quality is like. The English voice acting is probably not what I would call top-notch, but I think it's acceptable, and I know there are quite a few out there of you who do like to have an English voice option for your Japanese games. So if that's important to you, I think that's one tick for this game.
Chief, I can't stand this anymore. We've had bad harvests for 2 years. At this rate, we won't last till autumn.
That's right. The people of Fuji suffer, yet you won't open the country's storage. Lord Kitsune won't help us at all. At this rate, we'll all...
もう我慢ならねえ。去年も一昨年も不作。このままじゃ。
そうじゃ。富士の民は皆苦しんどる。だのに国の蔵は開けてくれん。狐様は何もしてくださらん。こうなったら我らはもう。
So as you can see, the illustration style for the game is quite traditional Japanese and very beautiful. Just have a look at the back of the box. And the bird also features here on the cloth. I don't know if you can see it, but there's the bird with the beak here. So what's in the box is a pretty straightforward limited edition. Here's the game. And back then, I think it was 2017, they were still publishing for Region 4. It's very rare these days to get a niche Japanese game that is published specifically for our region, Oceania. Otherwise, we have a Yata mirror, and that obviously features in the game, and the soundtrack. 20 tracks, and I will use a little bit of that occasionally in the background. So not a big LE, but very nice. The art book in particular, while small, is really nice. So here we have some of the characters. Our main character, Kaguya and Sakuya, Tsukuyomi and Hanasaka. And those two are particular favourites of mine, Kintaro and Kuma, the bear. As you can imagine, he is jolly useful to have in your party, especially in the beginning.
「
especially in the beginning. I'm sure you'll recognize the name of Susanoo, much used in Japanese games. Amaterasu and Momotaro. These are all names that will be known to you if you've read a bit about the Japanese mythology, history, etc. And there are more characters. I can't show them all to you. Here is the phoenix, Kitsune, our Japanese fox deity. You all know Okami, the wolf deity. And there are many more gons. Here's some illustration of backgrounds using traditional Japanese buildings. The pages are not numbered, so I can't tell you how many there are. But it's a nice, compact little hardback with beautiful print. Now, as I mentioned before, God Wars also came out on other platforms. They did a Vita port. That was certainly much appreciated at the time. I've got the North American edition here. There are several more editions, like a PAL version, an Asian version, obviously a Japanese one. So for all you Vita fans out there, the remaining ones, I should say you should still be able to pick up a copy if you want to. So if that's the limited edition, why do I have another box? Now, that is a very good question. I can only say I wanted it. So I imported it from Japan. It is pre-owned and it does have a few markings on the box, unfortunately. But otherwise, it's a pretty stunning box, wouldn't you agree? There is actually not much inside. In fact, apart from the game, only one item. But that item, that's the one I wanted. You see, here's the Japanese version of the game included. This is a whopper of a heavy paperback. It's obviously all in Japanese, but, with my phone and a translation app, I can decipher some of it. I mean, I can only show you a few pages. There is so much in this book. If you happen to be a fan of this game, this is the ultimate illustrated book to have, really. So here we see some of the concept artwork, which is always interesting, of course. And you can see the little chibi-style figures at the bottom there, which are, of course, the ones that appear in-game during the dialogue and battle sequences. Now, this style of doing it was very common with Japanese games, I think, at that time. And I've had another example very recently in my part 6 of the PS3 exclusives. I showed you the game Tears to Tiara 2. That had a very similar system. It looks a bit dated to us these days, of course, but I don't know. It sort of has the charm of yesteryear. I quite appreciate it for that. The illustration and design effort that went into this game is just wonderful. It is a shame, therefore, that it isn't really rendered in all its glory when you see it, especially on a big TV screen. I will just show you a little bit so you'll see what I mean. It looks a bit fuzzy, I would say, sort of more like a PS3 game. You can see here what I was talking about, referring to the rather basic and fuzzy-looking background graphics.
Sister? Is that you? Could it be? Kaguya?
It's been a while, Sister Iwanaga. I'm your younger sister, Kaguya.
Kaguya, why are you in a place like this? I thought you were being held in Fuji.
So that's definitely a downside. If that's the sort of thing you dislike, then I would say it's probably not for you. However, the game was published not only for PS4 and Vita, but also a bit later for the Switch. I think in 2018 they brought out an overhauled edition called the Complete Edition. Sorry, the Complete Legend. I bought it digitally on the Switch, and I was blown away. Due to the compression factor when you're playing it handheld on the smaller screen, the whole issue with the, fuzziness of the graphics is really reduced. The game, in my opinion, really shines on handheld, and the Switch has by far the best edition. It includes all the DLC. It includes a load of extra scenes and scenarios, lots of improvements. It is the best final edition, really. So this is the one I would strongly recommend if you have a Switch and you'd like to dive in. You can't go wrong with a Switch edition, the Complete Legend. If you don't have a Switch, but have a PlayStation 4, it is still a very nice and good game. And it looks great on the Vita too, especially on the old OLED Vita. Now, out of all the editions available for the game, I would be really, really surprised if they did not try to republish the Switch edition, because, they put a load of extra work into that. And it's not that old yet. It's not even 5 years old. So I think at this stage there are various options how to deal with this situation. Now, while the PS4 and Vita versions are being delisted within the week, so there's only days left, there's a little ray of sunshine in that the Switch edition will not be delisted until the end of August. So you have time. With any luck, they might even have it in a sale before then. You could go the other route and look for a physical copy. And I've had a quick check, like on eBay and elsewhere, and there are still copies around. The situation is not too bad. So we're on the road, and wouldn't you know it, ambush. And straight away the terrain reminds me of older tactics games like Final Fantasy Tactics or even Sayuki Journey West.
Lady Kaguya, please cooperate and turn yourself in.
Jeez, these...
It's a priority for me to always get to a treasure chest.
Yes!
This death revival mechanic reminds me of Final Fantasy Tactics. Now, tactics battles are, by their very nature, often quite protracted.
Please go home and tell Kitsune I won't return. I'm going to see my mother.
Mother? Where is Lady Tsukuyomi right now?
I don't know. That's why we're going to go look for her.
And can take up a fair amount of time. So I'll just skip through the proceedings here, because the combat is very traditional, straightforward, easy to handle. The system is absolutely clear. I cannot fault it there on any front. In fact, I think this game is incredibly suitable for people who are new to the tactics genre. It introduces you to everything really well, starts off simple, but quickly ramps up, so you definitely don't get bored with it. So I'm wrapping up the battle here, the final 2 adversaries, and I managed to get all the 3 treasure chests, which is always important that you get the timing right to do them.
I can do better.
Oh.
Leave Kaguya alone!
Thanks, you two.
Now I want to just cover quickly 2 more of the games that are on the list for being delisted. One of them is called The Lost Child, and again I have the PS4 limited edition. So here's the game. Another small hardback art book, which is okay. It's not as splendid as the God Wars art book. Now the 2 archangels, Michael and Lucifer, play an important part, and you may be reminded of another game from the PlayStation 3 era called El Shaddai, and apparently this game, The Lost Child, is meant to be a sort of spiritual successor. I can't judge that because I've never played El Shaddai, but the game has a certain resemblance to Shin Megami Tensei in some of the gameplay mechanics concerning demons. It is obviously not in the same league as an SMT game. I don't think it's a brilliant game, to be honest, but I certainly enjoyed playing it. It does have some sort of basic puzzles in the dungeons that can get just slightly tedious from my perspective, and battles also tend to be rather repetitive, as is often the case, let's face it, in dungeon crawling JRPGs, but maybe a bit too much here. So there's good stuff in here, and it's not a bad game, but I wouldn't rate it as a special game. It's strictly for aficionados of niche JRPGs, I would say. There was also a Vita version published, but I've mainly played it on the PS4. And of course there's also a soundtrack for The Lost Child, and I see that's still in cellophane, never been opened. I really need to get those tracks and maybe use them sometime. That comes from not doing unboxings of limited editions when you get them. Very naughty of me. So that's The Lost Child. The other game I want to draw your attention to is pretty well known. It's a game that first burst upon the scene on the Vita in 2014 in the West. It came out a year earlier in Japan, and that is, of course, Demon Gaze. Now, people nowadays say all sorts of, derogatory things about Demon Gaze, like it's not a big deal. But back then, as I see it, it was a big deal. It was a bit of a breath of fresh air in the dungeon crawling department. I've played the heck out of this game on the Vita in particular. So this is the PAL edition of the original Demon Gaze game. And I also happen to have the global edition, which is Region 3, that's basically Asia. Interesting, same artwork. And I also have the limited edition, which comes with the North American release. Again, the same artwork. A bit unusual, they often do them differently for each region, but in this case it's all the same. It's not much of a limited edition, they call it that, but really it's just a box, one side open, and it comes with a small soft cover book of art. That's our main character, Oz. Here are some of the demons you can recruit. Another soundtrack still in its cellophane cover. I'm not doing very well here, am I? So that's Demon Gaze on the Vita. It also came out on the PS4 much later, of course. I happen to have again a Region 3 edition, which is called Extra. So it had a bit of a makeover, I suppose. But I think this Extra edition is also available in the West. Now, some people get a bit sniffy about Demon Gaze due to its, let's call it a fan service. I would say it's in the mould of the type of wacky humour that NIS games often go for, combined with a little bit of innuendo here or there. It didn't put me off playing the game. The gameplay, in my opinion, has that addictive loop that you can get with a dungeon crawler that is well designed. The dungeons are varied and have sort of puzzle obstacles built in that are quite fun to overcome. Some of them can drive you round the bend. Yeah, great fun. A Demon Gaze for me was, in the early days of my Vita playing, an introduction to the colourful and wonderful world of Japanese dungeon crawling games. There you are. You won't hear a bad word about Demon Gaze from me. There was a sequel, Demon Gaze 2. It's also available in a PS4 edition. And these games, as far as I'm aware, have all also been ported to the Switch. Demon Gaze 2 proved, I think, reasonably popular. It dialed back a bit on the so-called fan service element. In the process, in my opinion, it lost just a bit of that unusual and entertaining character of the first game. I find it a bit blander, but if that suits you more, then Demon Gaze 2 might be appropriate, and it's still got the same, not the same, it's actually changed, slightly different style of gameplay. The way the demons are managed is different. So that's just a very quick look at Demon Gaze. The Vita version of Demon Gaze will be delisted in 2 days' time. So if you want a digital copy, it doesn't leave you a lot of time. Demon Gaze 2, however, you've got plenty of time until November. I would think if Kadokawa can republish the game Demon Gaze, they're more likely to do it with the Extra edition, which obviously wouldn't come to the Vita. So if you're a Vita diehard, the original game is the only option really, the original game and the second game. And the last game on the list, which I'm just going to show you very briefly, is Natural Doctrine. PS4 version here, also available on the other platforms. Natural Doctrine is a very hard game to recommend due to a variety of issues with the gameplay in particular. Most people will cite as the first factor the punishing, brutal difficulty. But there are a few other things as well in how exactly the mechanics have been implemented. And while I think it's a great idea, the execution is perhaps a bit too fiddly. It just took me far too long to work out positioning and angling, and, you got to take so much into consideration for each move on the battle grid that I just literally ran out of steam. That doesn't make it a bad game, it just means you have to have incredible patience, a lot of time, and be a bit experienced in working out tactics and strategic gameplay. I don't think the game sold very well at all. So I have to say I'd be surprised if that was republished, to be honest. I have seen it over the years always heavily discounted in sales on PlayStation. So if you wanted to pick it up for a few dollars, there might be an opportunity. So to recap in order of urgency, the one that's being chopped, lopped, delisted very, very soon in 2 days is the Vita version of Demon Gaze. After that, on the 15th of June, it's the 2 PlayStation versions of God Wars. And I don't often do this, but if you think you might like the game, if you want to show support for this type of game, I really, really recommend you look at obtaining a copy, whether physical or digital. And I've told you that my clear preference and recommendation is for the Switch version. But if you don't have a Switch, the PlayStation version is fine too. I obviously can't say with any certainty that it will reappear magically republished by a different company, maybe Kadokawa, in the future. If so, I'll be very happy. But I don't want you guys missing out. I think you've got all the information here that will allow you to make up your mind, depending on your own situation, what you want to do, whether it's worth it for you to pick up one of these games. After that, also this month, not far away, on the 18th, all versions of The Lost Child will be delisted. As I mentioned before, the Switch version of God Wars, The Complete Legend, you have until the end of August to decide whether to get it or in what form, physical or digital. And Natural Doctrine you have until the end of September, and Demon Gaze 2 on PlayStation you have until November. Okay, I know that's a lot to take in, but I was spurred on to do this because of my special affection for God Wars. If you're not put off by the dated-looking graphics, I think you'll be in for a real treat. That's it for today. This was meant to be a very, very quick emergency video. I think, as usual, I got into a bit more detail than expected, but that's what always happens when I talk about games. I get carried away. Thank you very much, as always, for your time. I hope you got something out of this. Please keep well. I'm Food for Dogs. Bye-bye. Yes, it is a mirror.